It is funny. It kind of ruins movies for me because
Yeah.
you're watching it. You got Legolas in Lord of the Rings with a quiver that never—it was magic. It never emptied.
That's right. Yeah, we're like, there's no way they could refill them that fast. You know that. Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there to help some metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTER15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Ew.
On our podcast, episode 193, as Nick continues to keep us in line.
Yep. Thank you, Nick.
It's been a long day to keep us in line today.
It's been a long one.
Yeah.
Just came off basically a Bomar binger.
I went outside to eat and the sun burned my eyes.
Yeah, my corneas.
What's going on? Where am I? Yeah, so it is still July 11th. If you're listening to this, it's towards the end of July at this point.
I think it's the 30th.
Whoa.
It's my dad's birthday. He doesn't listen to the podcast, but
be cool if he did.
Dad.
Today's the 30th as it's dropping.
Yeah.
We'll be back here again, I think, with
and we're back.
Maybe DeQuisto, or we got a couple. We got
next
like 3
week,
stacked that day. Yeah. They're stacked. We're stacked. Our calendar all of a sudden is flush, and we're like, hey, it's going to take us right into hunting season. So that's exciting. And I'll just roll into my part here. So hey, thank you for being here. Wherever you're listening to us from YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, give us a like, follow, or subscribe, whatever's appropriate for the channel. We appreciate the follow and the engagement, all that stuff. One of those will give you.
Sound like Joe Biden's debate.
Over here.
All that stuff, that we're doing.
One of those will give you a notification. I'm pretty sure, like on YouTube, whenever we drop these episodes. But if not, we drop them every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. And it's been the same for 3.5 years. So we will.
Seems like it's developed a pattern at this point.
Yeah, we don't have plans on changing that. But also, if you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, those are the 2 that we try to stay up with. There's a few backlog there, so thank you for your patience with us.
Yep.
But either way, here we go.
Here we go. So, okay, if Nick's calculations are correct, we're 2 days away from August, which is mind-blowing that the season is like there. In fact, I would assume sometime mid-August, some of the early seasons out west start cranking in. Is that what that is?
Oh, yeah. I mean, guys will be antelope hunting.
Yeah, antelope hunting.
July,
end July, early August.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's wild. It's crazy that it's like that close already.
Oh, yeah.
So, prediction of the future, I'm hoping I have some rain by now. It would be nice.
I feel like you've been saying that for a month.
It's been more than a month. Yeah. It's been a month for the soybeans. It's been longer than a month for my pond that is just a gaping crater in my backyard at this point.
That's true.
With about 6 inches of stagnant water.
Is your wife starting to doubt the decision? She's like,
well, so my initial projections were 4 to 8 weeks to fill it up. We have not had any rain in 8 weeks, therefore not filled up.
Yeah.
So we're looking more like maybe 2027 or so. It's filled up.
There's no scenario where you fill that like with a water truck or anything, right? Like it.
No. I mean, it's
just a lot of water.
A lot of water. Yeah. It's got good springs coming into it, but literally it hasn't rained in like 8 weeks.
It is getting water though, like on a daily, a little bit?
I mean, trickles. Because there's no groundwater either. I mean, my yard is as brown as this table right now. The whole yard.
Everywhere.
Just torch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about my food plot behind the house because it's like,
It's a bad time to be a golfer.
oh, yeah. Can you imagine the water bills for like a golf course trying to keep that stuff up and stuff? I mean, it is dry.
Weird that we're getting hit with it. Like the Midwest, I mean, west, whatever, wherever the line in Iowa.
It's going north. Like that's what's been happening.
And
is
south. I mean, Texas is getting water.
Well, yeah. I mean, but like that gap from like where we're at through West Virginia into Kentucky, I think Eastern North Carolina as well. I mean, it's like desert conditions. I think we're all in like a moderate drought.
Keep up with the Farmer's Almanac at all?
No.
Okay. I'm going to mess up the term here. Maybe Nick can Google it. Apparently, this is the first year that it switched from like whatever.
La Nina to El Nino?
Exactly.
Oh.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And the Santa Maria.
Yes.
Nina, so I think that means, I don't know what it means for summer, but I think it means we're supposed to have a harsher winter this year.
Oh, really?
I think so. It's gone on like whatever 7-year cycle of mild winters to we're looking at winter.
According to the Farmer's Almanac. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want rain in some form or fashion.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at. Does that mean anything for summer?
I don't know.
As far as
it's been really weird though, like because we've had events like again go by the weatherman, but there have been forecasted like heavy rains, and then they just vanish. It'll be like, oh, we're getting an inch of rain on Wednesday, and this will be on Monday, and then by Wednesday it's gone. There is no rain. Just shifts patterns or whatever, I guess. So that's been the historical trait here for the last 8 weeks. Hopefully by the time this drops, my naked rain dances will have worked.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see that anymore.
Bound to catch them at some point.
Yeah. You would think. You would think.
Yeah, I do think.
So, because I mean, it goes back. We talked a little bit about it with Bomar, but I mean, it definitely will have an effect on antler growth in the drought areas.
We don't know that.
I think it 100% will.
I mean, that's per that conversation. If we're saying some of the best antler growth happens in drought years, we don't know.
I would assume.
I will tell you, I have had very adequate rainfall for the most part in Ohio. And so far, there's 2 that come to mind that, like, man, I would have thought would make a jump, and they're
not.
Like from 4 to 5, about the same.
I have a really
no
good
real jump.
One of the better deer on the new Kentucky farm last year was probably 4, I would assume. Maybe it was 5. And this year he's like no different.
However, I will say I have 2, one from 2 to 3 and one from 4 to 5 that have made substantial jumps.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can say one way or the other, frankly.
No.
I think it has more to do with the deer.
Yeah, and then, then acorn crops and stuff will be also interesting to see what happens this year. Obviously, some banging ones the last, 2 years in some cases.
Yeah. Willie texted us the other day. He said that they've got a pile of white oak acorns up. That's New York, so I haven't checked on our farm yet. But
yeah, so I don't know.
That's like an August activity. August, I'll start looking.
Really weird. Yeah, really weird how it's just kind of, because our farm in Illinois has been getting plenty of rain.
Solid, yeah.
Your Ohio farm, adequate rain, and then it's just like a bubble.
Yeah, just your Kentucky place is all it's hurting.
Yeah,
and I was getting good rain.
Kansas. Well, we didn't draw North Dakota. North Dakota's gotten a pile of rain, and it's like the hell.
When we do get to hunt North Dakota eventually, someday it's gonna be sweet.
Someday. Anyways, we got a guest today.
We do.
So we got Gary Cornum from Sever and Easton. So we've talked with Gary for quite a while now. Obviously, working partners of ours, but we just got the new Sever broadheads in 2 days ago.
Are they the 1.5 hybrids?
Yep. With the bleeder
You've
braids.
seen them kind of everywhere recently online, where it would have been a few weeks ago when you're listening to this, but
yeah,
for good reason. They're pretty sick.
Yeah, and I sent you, I can't remember who did it, but there was that bow hunting or the broadhead review guy who did a thorough test on them.
Yeah.
And it was the highest scoring broadhead he's ever tested. Yeah, which was really, really wild. I would say 95 or 96 or something like that out of 100. So
he's done them all. I mean, he's done the Schwackers, the Beasts, to stack them all side by side. So there's different application for stuff, and I mean, even in some cases, there's a strong argument for a fixed blade broadhead. But if you've heard Jeremy and I's stance basically on broadheads and stuff, that's the one right there. Yeah. I mean, it's the first one I think that's come about where it's got still the traditional of what we're looking for in an expandable, but those bleeder blades obviously being
strong, number one, and then a huge advantage to be able to. It's always been for us. It's the cut on contact. As compared to another broadhead like a Schwacker or something that you need that pass through to get that giant hole, right? For us, it's that cut on contact, that initial hit making that large hole for that ability to have, a good blood trail. So yeah, that's kind of been the big play here.
I mean, so the bleeder blades are huge because they give you the perpendicular cut. So when you talk about opening a wound channel,
it's like a 4-blade at that point.
It's like it gives you some of that aspect, but still with like the overall cutting diameter of, I think overall it's like over 2 inches of cutting. I could be slightly off on that, but Gary can correct us. So.
Yep. So, but anyways, so yeah, super
Look at that thing.
Yeah, nasty looking, nasty looking. So, with that, let's bring Gary in. We got you, Gary.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
We got you, sir.
Sir.
Perfect.
Sweet.
Well, we appreciate you jumping on for us in the Eastern time this afternoon and talking with a little bit with us on Sever and Easton and just kind of wherever our rabbit hole discussions decide to go.
Yeah, happy to do it. I love getting on, love talking to you guys, and love talking about my favorite topics, which are centered around archery. So, yeah, we've, with the new Sever coming out, that's been a blast for us. And so we got that going on. And then on the Easton side, we are getting to that final stages of our introductions for next fall. So there's plenty going on around here.
Cool. Gary, before we start, can you open or introduce like your role at Easton or at Sever? I know we introduced you kind of at both. What was your role at those companies?
Yeah, so I'm the director of marketing here. I started at Easton in 1993. And so I've been here, seen a lot of change over the years. And
Jeremy's giving me the side eye because he knows that's the year I was born, Gary.
Yeah, it's funny how quick it went, but I'm running into that more and more for my coworkers. I'm like, whoa. Yeah, but you'll find that to be true when you get down the road in your career and all of a sudden you look in the rearview mirror and you're like, wait, I'm not the new guy anymore. And suddenly I'm the old guy, and but it's gone so quick. But that's what happens when you're blessed enough to live or to work in something that you love doing, and so that's when you have that, you can infuse that into everything you do, from the product line to the marketing to the promotions that you do, because we get to get out in the field and have those heart-pounding moments. So how cool is it that you're making a product that allows those things to happen? And so with my team here, the marketing team, I always never let them forget that. It's like we're not making these things because people have to buy them. We're making these things because they want to go out and have those heart-pounding moments. It's not about the product; it's about those moments. And so the product allows that to happen. So everything, just being able to do that in a job is you can infuse that passion into everything that we do promotional, and you can really believe in what you're doing that way.
Very cool. So Gary, when you in '93, when you got there, was it your first industry job, or had you been in the industry prior to that?
Yeah, right out of college, and I worked in retail for about a year, and then I always thought how cool it would be because I grew up like a lot of you and our listeners, hunting with their dads when they were little kids, and being so excited to go out. You couldn't sleep the night before and all that stuff, and I always thought how cool it would be to actually work in that industry. And then I had a friend that from high school whose brother was the sales manager down here. A position came open. So again, I was pretty much like maybe not even a year out of college, took that job, and then started out as a marketing coordinator. And I had a degree in marketing from University of Utah that I just completed. And so it kind of fit. I got into that sales and marketing part of Easton, and then became marketing manager after that, and then director of marketing now go for 20 years. So been running we have a great team here though. And, I'm just grateful for them too, because there's so much. We always say, marketing never stops. It's just when you go home, because you can always do one more podcast. You can always do one more Instagram post. You can always do, work on an ad or whatever. So marketing is, I mean, you can stay as late as you want. There, it's not like you're running a machine or doing accounting or something that when your work is done, it's done. You could keep promoting as long as you want to stay in your chair. So yeah. I think, with us loving what we do, you see come up into marketing and we're always the last ones to go home at night, we got to get that last little bit in and we love what we do. So that's
the
cool.
truth. Well, Gary, because every time you've called me or that we've spoken, on the phone and stuff, it's always like after hours or like on a Sunday afternoon. And I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, why are you calling me? He's like, I just, it sounds like throughout the week there, you're kind of leading a big team and everybody needs things throughout the week. And so, when Gary gets times to do things, it's after hours or on the weekends to actually get things done that he has on his list.
Yeah, it is. And what we describe it as the drive up window. So, you got all these people, whoever it is, engineering, they need product artwork or who knows what's going on. And everybody needs something designed or, we got an event coming up and they need something for that, for marketing. So during the day, we're sort of running that drive up window, so to speak. Somebody will come by and say, hey, I needed a graphic for a Total Archery Challenge come up. And so we're like, well, you want fries with that too? It's just like they're constantly coming in and looking for stuff. And then at 5 o'clock, they all go home. And then we're like, okay, now let's get our work done. I need to call Jared or whoever, it's like I forgot throughout the day because I've been running the drive up window requests all day long.
Well, before we let it slip by, and not in a braggadocious way, but I know everybody's heard of Easton and probably of Sever as well. Without sharing like sales details or anything like that, do you have some way to express like accolades of Easton? Maybe how long you guys have been in business or number of shafts sold or something like that? Give us an idea of the scale of the company you guys are running there.
Yeah, so we've been in. Doug Easton started the company officially in 1922.
Wow.
So we're 102 years now, and we've gone from one man in his garage making wood longbows and wood arrows with feather fletching to him being an innovator, and he took those products he was making out of wood, which were probably the best at the time because that's who Doug Easton was. He was a perfectionist, so to speak, and so he was frustrated at the time with the inconsistencies of wood grain, things like that. So he actually invented the aluminum arrow, which back at the time bow hunting was going on, but there's a lot of tournament archery too, and so people took their groups from this to this overnight just by that one innovation, and that kind of that's in our DNA as a company now, that legacy of innovation. And being 102 years old, the way I look at it is, you don't last that long if you're not driven and you're not constantly on your game to make better and better products.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's a testament to, our drive to do that. And, we come here every day with that in mind. And all we think about is arrows. And sometimes I go home and I think, gosh, how much can you think about archery in one day? But that's all we do. And so we're constantly thinking about how can we make this better? And it's little small increments each day and each year that, leads to innovations and products that we have today by, but if you go back through the history, it went from that. And then we started into carbon, and then we started marrying the two materials together with aluminum carbon hybrids that we still use today and are state of the art. And then small diameter, it just keeps going that way. And so we have that, and we make millions of arrows. I used to kind of know how many we were running through the plant every day back when I was helping out with some of the sales forecasts and some of that. I really haven't looked at it for a while, but I know we make millions of arrows every year. So
wow.
And for all types of archery, from the little kids starting out in the backyard, learning with their parents or coaches, to all the way up to, people going on hunts of a lifetime, or all the way to the Olympic podium. So right now with this podcast airing, we might be into the Olympics right about now. We're hoping to see yet another X10 arrow win the gold, silver, and bronze once again. So
Mm.
we're looking forward to that, and watching that right now as this goes on.
I think my first experience around Easton was growing up, probably with my dad, was around the XX75 arrow.
Yeah.
Like that arrow, like I just remember vividly in the head, like, when my dad was bow hunting, he's
That
like,
was the arrow, right?
I
It
shoot
was
double
a staple.
X75s. Yeah, that seemed like the staple.
I'm a
at
bow
least.
hunter and I shoot double X75s.
Yeah, and that was the mainstay. And going back to my tenure here, when I came to Easton in '93 on your birthday,
Mm-hmm.
we were XX75, XX78, Super Slams. Those were kind of the mainstay. We had ACCs at the time, which, we still make that AC product on the tournament side, but we also have it for hunting in the X10 Parallel Pro. And then the all carbon was just coming into the market at that time. So that's kind of the genesis of it. But I look at Easton with 100 years in the industry as almost like it parallels the modern bow hunting era. If you look at Pope and Young and those guys that were and Fred Bear and some of the others that were initial pioneers of bow hunting, that's kind of when they were starting on.
Mm-hmm.
And so Easton's history is sort of the same as the history of modern bow hunting, because before that, there really was no bow hunting. Guys hunted with a gun. And before that, it was, Native Americans or whoever hunting with a bow. But as a pastime or as a recreation, bow hunting came into vogue about that same time, about 100 years ago. So our history is sort of runs parallel to that history. And I like to think that, a big part of that was the innovations and products that we had made throughout that time that led to more and more people picking up a bow and deciding, hey, I want to try hunting with this, and then
Mm-hmm.
discovering just how thrilling it is to go out and hunt with a bow and arrow.
I'm not going to ask because of your age, Gary, but speaking to the history of archery and of bow hunting, I was just thinking about pre-1920s. It's that's as far back as probably I could conceive as far as
Mm-hmm.
bow hunting goes. But certainly you had Native Americans prior to, white people being in the, in the Americas that were bow hunting with traditional bows and stuff. Was there just kind of, do you know, was there just kind of a void of archery in the 1800s? Or what was happening?
Going back to that, there was, even if you look, go way back, say, into the 1600s, they were in, archery was in warfare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Prior to the invention of firearms. And I think as part of that, there was competitive archery because, you want to be good at your craft. You want to be good at warfare. You're a sniper. You practice. You practice your marksmanship. Well, back then, that's what they did. So they were, yes, there were subsistence hunters like Native Americans, that kind of thing. But in Western culture, there would have been bows and arrows in warfare. So tournament archery, I think, was kind of competitive archery was sort of running parallel to that. And then when I look at our history books here in the company, some of the archery early materials that we have, I see a lot of tournament archery at the turn of the 20th century, so 125 years ago roughly. There's pictures of those guys shooting target faces as a competitional pastime, and that's where I really feel like that was driving it at the time. Doug Easton's early days, there's a lot of photos and stories that we have in our archives where you see they're lined up on the field shooting competitively with wood longbows and wood arrows, and his drive to make a product that would wood arrows, you had to number them, because if you aim one arrow at the bullseye, it's hit at 2 o'clock. You hit another arrow at the bullseye, it might hit at 5 o'clock.
Right.
They would write down what arrow number hit where. So, like if you had an arrow that was going to hit at 2 o'clock, you would aim over at 8 o'clock to hit the bullseye. So they would go, oh, here's arrow number 5. I need to aim over here. that was frustrating for him. So he started looking at other materials, figured out aluminum, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't have to number my arrows anymore. They're all going to hit the bullseye if I execute the shot. But at the same time, then if you start looking at Pope and Young, and Art Young and Saxon Pope, they started bow hunting in the early 1900s. They took that archery as competitive archers, and they took it to the field and said, "Hey, let's go out and hunt with them." And they encountered Ishi the Indian, and he taught them a lot about how to bow hunt and a lot about archery back at that time. And that's why we have the Pope and Young record books, right? Because they were kind of those two pioneers of modern bow hunting, and which happened to coincide with some of the companies and brands that have been around that whole time, like Easton and Bear and Hoyt, that have been just kind of come along with that, and then others that came along the way that we still have in the industry. But so I think as a sportsman activity, we're looking at about 100 years, maybe a little bit more of guys going out, buying a license and hunting.
And then it really seemed like, from a boom, and maybe it was mainly the whitetail market, but it was around that like 70s and 80s time frame that you really saw that boom in the archery market kind of take off. Right.
I like to think of different sports and things like that as, what is the golden age? You look at something like baseball, you go, oh, the golden age was like, Babe Ruth, the 30s and 40s and 50s, And I always ask myself, what's the golden age of bow hunting? I kind of think it might be right now, because you look at kind of where we're at and how popular it is, and 20 or 30 years from now, we might be looking back and saying, you know what, that was when archery really got. Yeah, it's been there all along, like throughout the 50s, but it was. It was those inventions, the compound bow, for example, that really opened up the sport to so many more people. 3D archery, competitive archery, made so much. People could go out and shoot during the year. So, I think if you take a 30-year period, the golden age of bow hunting might be starting around early 1990s up through maybe over the next 10 years or something like that, because the way I see it is, I see lots of guys coming in still. I see people out having fun shoots and shooting things like Total Archery Challenge that are more and more popular. So, I think we're in a good spot, bow hunting and archery wise.
Well, and from a hunting standpoint, I mean, hopefully longer. You'd like to extend that golden age as long as you can, right? And so, Jeremy and I talk all the time about, you see some big issues on the horizon, whether it be disease in wild deer herds or access, as most of the the United States is occupied in the whitetails habitat and stuff. So, hopefully in some small way we can help to extend that golden age, if nothing else. But that kind of seems like where we're at in it right now.
Yeah, I think you're right, and. I remember my early days here, there was always concern. There was a lot of concern about, anti-hunters, which are still there, but it wasn't on everybody's lips. It's not on everybody's lips like it was back then. And then you look at, and then land access was always a big one.
Yeah.
And I think those issues still exist, but they haven't squashed the sport by any means. People are figuring out how to get out of the field and hunt. And it seems like, I'm with you. I don't think we're seeing like the sunset of any of that. I think, if anything, if we look at it as kind of the rise of, the sport, I think we're right in the middle of it, and I'm sure it'll continue, but I'm sure we'll look back on these times and go, yeah, that was a really cool time in archery.
The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt, it stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTER, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt. I was gonna say, we talk about access and even we've done some clips here recently where, it's overwhelming that people are like, hey, guys are leaving hunting because of the access issue. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to like the gun hunters, but in most cases, I think the archery hunters tend to be more dedicated, right? Because they have more time throughout the year, usually from a hunting side. I think those guys will figure out a way to make it happen, right? Whether it is, toughing it out on public land or leasing ground or buying ground or whatever it ends up being.
It's inherently because, if guys are passionate about it, they're going to want to find ways to enjoy the season and its completion.
Yep.
And a bow hunting season offers that. So it's a natural transition from, a gun to a bow so that you can be a part of that.
I mean, it's the one category that seems like it continues to grow in numbers, whereas maybe the gun hunting community dwindles a little bit, that archery community, from a license sales perspective especially, seems to keep going up in a lot of states.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. And I started out as a gun hunter and I still enjoy it. But when I realized just the animals right there and the extra challenge, and then the adrenaline is so different. Like if I'm taking a long shot with a rifle, I almost don't feel it. But when a buck or whatever I'm hunting gets into my bow hunting range circle, my heart starts to pound even to this day.
Yep.
And I don't get that. And I think that when people realize that and have a taste of that, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then when you like, what I get a kick out of now is taking somebody on their first bow hunt. And if you're able to be lucky enough to have them, take an animal, and then you can kind of relive that again with them in that vicarious way. And then see that, oh, wow, that I can't believe I just did this with sticks and strings, it's just like, this is so cool that it all came together. It just adds another level of enjoyment that you almost can't describe.
Yeah, well, it always seemed to be, because I started out gun hunting, at least for my first season. I think it was when I was 13, I started to bow hunt, and it always, to me, that was the pinnacle, right? Because I'd watch my dad and my uncles and stuff out bow hunting, but like I was, when I first started, it was just gun only, right? It was like, hey, you've got to practice, you have to be proficient with this. I started with a recurve and then eventually moved into a compound to actually hunt with. But like once you got to that level and then harvested your first deer, it was like, I mean, you talk about the hook drug. I mean, that was it. It was like, this is hunting, and it didn't mean that you didn't gun hunt, because for most of us, it was like we wanted to occupy the entire season. Like whatever season was in, we were going to do it.
Well, here, funny enough, Gary may get a kick out of this. It wasn't intentional at all. Obviously, my dad and my uncle and my grandpa, I can always remember them, like they'd set their scopes outside with their guns and stuff, and they would do their gun hunting stuff, and that was great. But I knew my uncle was into bow hunting, so I was ready. Like the day I turned 12, that's what it was in Pennsylvania. When you're 12 years old is the first time you could start hunting. There was no youth seasons. I was bow hunting, and I've been bow hunting ever since. And I have gun hunted. I've shot some deer with a gun, and I just shot my first buck with a gun last year. And I just, when that happened, I kind of like realized it for the first time. I was like, have I been hunting this whole time? And it just, whatever it was, I was successful enough with a bow, or just didn't have the opportunity with a gun. And I've certainly killed, a handful of bucks at this point, a good number of them. But to finally, I killed my first buck with a gun last year after, I was 30 years old. Yeah. I've been hunting for 18 years before I killed a buck with a gun. Kind of crazy. And I will tell you, I shared the feeling of when that happened. It was kind of like it wasn't quite the same. It was fun. Don't get me wrong. And my dad was with me, so it was special. And it was off our Illinois farm that Jeremy and I bought, but it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah, it is different, and it's not necessary. Not putting it down or anything, but there's a reason. Like, we all connect as bow hunters, and we all kind of know, right? Mm-hmm. And then we don't talk about it or vocalize it all the time, but we all kind of know. Hey, this is I really and then you get so excited when you kill something exceptional with a bow or whatever it might be, because that there was that extra element of uncertainty and challenge, and then to get it done is just so gratifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely is. Well, Gary, so kind of looking at that, time frame of like even the golden year type of thing, obviously early in that, you had double X75s and 78s and the slams. When did carbon really start to become a focus point for Easton?
Yeah, so we went to we started experimenting with carbon actually in the 1980s. But we kind of brought it out more as an aluminum carbon hybrid, which is always kind of almost like we skipped a level. We went straight from the dog dare to the triple dog dare. We were just like, we're like, then we almost backtracked into all carbon.
Yeah.
And so. But we started experimenting with those materials back in the 80s, and then got into our first product had just been launched when I started. It was called the pultruded carbon, the PC shaft. We already had the ACCs in the line, which were aluminum carbon hybrids, but the all carbon PC had just entered the Easton line, and then it was probably another. What those used is they used all outsert components, both at the knock end and at the point end. Then the next innovation was making a carbon arrow that you could use internal components. With that came out probably about 5 years later, and that really busted open the whole carbon as an arrow. That popularity just soared on that. Once that happened, it's interesting though to kind of see us go back to those outserts and
right.
half outs and coming back around, but it's like people, some folks think, hey, this is brand new, and it's like, well, it was out before, but it's been perfected, so but yeah, carbon really came of age right in that late 90s era, and then we a few years later came out with products like the Axis. That was kind of the next big jump when we could get it down into the micro diameters by mixing up the components with the hit system, some of that. Yeah.
So here, can I ask you just a basic question? It's going to sound dumb, but what is carbon?
Well, it's it's at the basic level. I mean, if I went back and showed you our raw materials that we use here in the factory, it almost looks like it's like burnt string. It's actual carbon. It's an element, just like aluminum is an element.
Where does it come from? Is it mined?
No, it's manufactured.
Okay.
And you're kind of getting out of my forte. We can go talk to we can have an engineer on at some point, but it's actually manufactured. And it's manufactured. I don't know the process that they use, but it's kind of like they burn away everything else, and the carbon is what's left over.
Okay.
What they start with, I don't know what the base material is, but it's one of the elements, on the periodic table. It's carbon, and so that material is manufactured. Derived from a raw material, and then it's configured in so many different ways. Without, like I said, I'm not really qualified to do a deep dive in it, just because that's not my world. But being around it long enough, it is the attributes of carbon, though, you know very well. Carbon is very strong and very lightweight. Aluminum as a material is extremely precise, and strong and lightweight, but it's not as durable as carbon.
Mm-hmm.
So what I always tell folks, that are like, why do you do the FMJ, or why do you do all carbon? And so you look at all carbon as a hunting product is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's very utilitarian. It's durable. It's lightweight. So you're getting good speed out of your bow. Aluminum is, you look at our target line, you'll see many more products that include aluminum because it's so precise. And that's why, you look at like the X10 Parallel Pro, which you can hunt with, a lot of the elite archers will go to that because it's so accurate. So you look at those materials and you say carbon gets the job done very well. And for hunting, it's perfect. For the tournament archer, you've got some more challenges because these guys are shooting at a level that a lot of cases they have to shoot out to 70, 90 meters. So it's the system has to be very, very precise. But if you're off this far in a tournament, you might lose the tournament. If you're off this far in a hunt, you're probably okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Most cases. So it's it just lends itself to hunting. Now, then what I describe to people is, well, why an FMJ? Why an AC product? Well, what you're doing is you're taking the precision that aluminum brings to the party. You're taking the lightweight strength and durability that carbon brings to the mix, and you're marrying the two materials together. So what you're kind of getting is the best of all worlds. You're getting a lightweight, durable, strong product that is also extremely precise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why FMJs and AC products are so popular, because you're kind of getting the best of all worlds.
So when you talk about the aluminum side there, Gary, on the precise end, what makes that aluminum precise?
The nature of the material is, and the way you can manufacture it. So,
okay.
We draw the aluminum on what's called a draw bench here. And if you're ever here in Salt Lake, I can take you and I can show you our carbon area. I can show you we make our products right here behind the wall, in the wall behind me right here. It's very, so the material, the way carbon is used as the fiber that I was talking about, manufactured. It almost does look like you took some string or twine and burned it. And it uses a resin,
okay,
and to glue it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And there's variance in that resin and that carbon fiber, so the weights and the spines are harder to control. With aluminum, you're just basically drawing those tubes into a very precise wall thickness. There isn't any variance of resin and fiber, because it's all just a homogeneous kind of material. So when you get an aluminum out the other side, we can straighten it. It's perfectly straight.
Mm-hmm.
The weight match is exactly spot on, because you've drawn it exactly to a certain specification, diameter wise, and the spine around shaft is just impeccable. So It's just the nature of it. And so, you go to an indoor tournament where these guys are shooting, 3 days without missing the bullseye, 900 scores, and they're, the majority of them are shooting aluminum, and that's why.
Got it. And so, like in an aluminum setup, like unlike a carbon, where carbon we might have straightness of 0.001 or 0.003, we don't have that on the aluminum side.
It's much easier to get aluminum to be perfectly straight.
Got it. Okay.
We have the ability to straighten it too. Carbon is kind of what you get. So with carbon, you got to really control the process.
Mm-hmm.
And we have proprietary processes here at Easton, and the way we manufacture carbon arrows is different than the way they're made overseas. And so we've had to really focus on that development of that machinery to be able to make a carbon arrow as consistent as we do. We call it AccuCarbon, because our carbon arrows are made by a machine, and the ones that are made overseas are made by hand. And there's variance in that, depending on, the person And basically what you're doing is you're taking a sheet of carbon and you're rolling it over a steel mandrel and then baking it. So where that carbon overlaps itself, you can get spine inconsistency.
Gotcha.
But with ours, it's a continuous feed and machine made, so there is no overlap. And so we've had to develop that ourselves. We're like I was saying before, that's in our DNA as a company, going back to what Doug Easton started 100 years ago. Is we're striving for that perfection.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to develop our own processes here to make carbon arrows that are meet up to the Easton way. And so all of our process and machinery is proprietary, so that we can make a product that approaches some of those accuracy benchmarks that aluminum provides.
Wow.
I mean, I feel like that's a big deal. I mean, it's funny to like look out across the landscape of like arrow manufacturers or brands. You run through you think of 5 or 10 off the top of my head, and everybody's got like a preference, or it's because of what they've shot, or the marketing, frankly, which so much of this industry is. But it's a fair question. I think even as we were considering switching to Easton from Victories, which is what we shot prior, we're like, I don't want it to just be a marketing move. We're like, literally, what is different? Why is Easton? How are the shafts different? And that manufacturing process, I think, is the only thing that I've heard. I mean, maybe you can point to some others, but that literally makes Easton different from any other shaft that's on the market.
Yeah, and they're made here, and so we've had to, in order to do what we do, and keep the manufacturing here in the United States. I mean, I hope you guys do come out sometime, and
we will.
We get to have a tour, because I'll show you. We're starting with raw material out here, and we're making them. We're not just assembling here or anything like that, on our own machinery that we've developed. But as part of that mechanization, it's allowed us to automate. And you think about it, overseas labor is very cheap,
Mm-hmm.
and so in order for us to be able to compete, we have to make a better product, and we have to be able to do it at a cost that is market driven. And so we've had to the fortunate part about our processes is that while we're making a better product, because it's a machine made, consistent, repeatable product, it also saves us on the cost, so we can be competitive with the rest of the market. So we had a vice president of manufacturing here that just retired, and he always used to say and tell everybody here in the factory, all the factory workers, you have to earn your right every day to make arrows here in the United States, because there's a lot of competition out there, and we have to be on our game in order to keep our costs let down and keep our quality where it needs to be. And so that's how we kind of approach it, is we got to earn our right to be able to make it in the United States every day. And so our processes, we've been fortunate. Not only does it make a very accurate, consistent product, like you said, but it also helps us to keep the costs where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a lot in reference to arrows, like it just a thing that people say, I guess, but it's just like, oh, well, they're all made in the same place. Or you never know, like that's just this company, they all make them, and then they just put different labels on them and stuff. Is there any validity to that? I mean, I don't want to make you disparage anybody or name names or anything like that, but like how much truth is there to the fact that like a lot of these arrow shafts are coming out of like the same place?
Yeah, that is true. There are overseas manufacturers that you could call them up, and and they'll you put it in order, and they'll figure it out, and because they know how to do it, they're making it for other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So you put your label on it, and and I haven't dived into the specifics of that, but I do know, like, I don't know, okay, it's all coming out of 3 different facilities or whatever. Different companies are doing it different ways, but we're the only ones with a USA arrow factory. So we like to say we're the only arrow made in USA.
Yep.
And it makes us different. But yeah, there is an aspect of that where it could be sourced overseas. But like I was just saying in a meeting earlier today, it's like, let's just keep our head down, do what we do well, give it our best every day, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't disparage our competition really, like you say, because honestly, they make good products, and they're just people like you and me that are, grinding it out every day, trying to make a living as well. So,
For sure.
More power to them, but it keeps us on our toes. And we really feel like, okay, when we show up to work every day, we got to be on our game and do what we can as best as we can and make the best products we can, market them as best we can, and be competitive in the market. But there's a lot of good products out there, but I like to think that, that with us being different, we're 100 years old. We manufacture we have our own machinery, we have our own factory, that it gives us an advantage to be able to, control that process. Our engineering team sitting right over here, on the other side of this wall, we're doing our own. Our engineers are bow hunters.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just somebody in a factory overseas. They actually use the product.
Mm-hmm.
I use the product. You walk up and down the walls of Easton here, you see how many guys actually get out there and hunt. Think of what a difference that makes.
Huge.
When you come back from a hunt and you can say, you know what I really need? I need it to do this. Or and then the engineers, oh yeah, and then they go work on it, or they have experience doing that. You don't have that in those factories. You don't have that firsthand using the product. So I think that gives us a competitive advantage too.
I mean, dude, look at movies. I get a kick out of it. Every time you see archery equipment in a movie, literally never once. I don't think I've ever seen it executed correctly.
No.
It's like somebody's shooting a compound bow with their fingers, or
Yeah.
We used to do that
whether
back
it's
in the day.
Katniss Evergreen or Everdeen or whatever.
Yeah, their anchor points.
It's
up
like
at their eyeball.
ridiculous. And it's
Yeah.
just like, dude, if they asked one person that was a bow hunter or an archer, it's an easy fix.
Yeah.
It's just like they don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it is funny. I've noticed it too, and it kind of ruins movies for me because
Yeah.
you're watching it, and you're like, wow, they're holding that really heavy recurve for an awful long time there.
And my wife knows it's coming, so I don't even. She just looks. She's like, "Don't say it." She's like, "I know."
Right, and then you got Legolas in Lord of the Rings with a quiver that it was magic. It never emptied.
That's right. Yeah, we're like, there's no way they could refill them that fast. You know that.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are the things that, as an archer and a bow hunter, you pick up, right? That you're just watching these things, and then as soon as it comes on, you're like, that's not right. What are they doing? I do try to pay attention because I have seen more recognizable brands being brought into some of those pieces. It used to be who knows? It was just a blank bow or whatever. But
I think one of the James Bond or something. There was whatever they had, their PSE or something. The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but we're
right and you're wrong, and you just need to accept it.
We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line.
We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration, and we shoot broadheads that are going to give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And, the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us.
Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts.
Right on.
So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever Broadheads as well. So, Gary, when we talk about, and I think this is probably even foreign for Jared and I a little bit. I mean, obviously, we go and we shoot Total Archery Challenge and stuff like that, but we're not target archers, right? We're bow hunters by trade. Maybe talk a little bit to our audience about the target archery side of Easton, because I think we were talking to our guy Mick and stuff, It's a lot larger than I think we realized on that side of things.
Yeah, that's something. It's interesting. The domestic market is largely driven by hunting,
Yep.
but there, we have a fair amount. There's a fair amount of target archery going on. But when you start going overseas, which is kind of cool, we were just talking about importing arrows. It's cool because we export arrows.
Right.
And so, we're sending, the guys in China are using our arrows.
Wow.
That should be saying something.
That does say something.
Right, exactly. And so, that is an aspect of it. But when you talk about target archery, yeah, I mean, it's huge in like Europe. It's really big. That they don't have access to the shooting sports like we do.
Right.
And so archery is one of them that they can do. And then same with Asia. So it's very big, and a big part of our business is, making arrows. That's what's neat about Easton too, is we don't just kind of cherry pick one type of archery. I mean,
You're covering it all.
We're trying to we do it for everyone, because we could try to, we could go out and make, all these other accessory products or whatever, but we like, let's just focus on the arrow from point to nock. Let's just do that really well. And there's a few other things we dabble in, but mostly it's about arrows. And so, we make an arrow for every kind of archery and every type of archer. But it's really big. So Olympic style archery, recurve, like if you go into France, recurve is much more popular than compound. Same in Asia. So they kind of emulate that Olympic format, which is recurve shooting.
Yep.
But, there's a lot of compound as well. But that's what they get to do. If they want to be involved in the shooting sports, archery is one way to do it. There's a lot of clubs in Europe where people shoot recreationally. And so, and they fall, like if the Koreans have done so well in Olympic archery that, you see these like Olympic stars, Olympic athletes in the States, it's like, your Michael Phelps or somebody that just won all these gold medals in swimming. Well, in Korea, they don't win a whole lot. So they'll always, I mean, for the last 25 years have just almost dominated Olympic archery.
Wow.
With a lot of wins and a lot of medals. And so if you win a gold medal as a Korean, you go back and you're like Michael Phelps. You're like
the hero.
Hero back there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're on their, whatever their Wheaties are called, you're on their box. Because, that they don't, you're like a national hero. So it's all, it's different depending on the country, but target archery is worldwide is really big.
So, I mean, obviously we've got Paris Olympics here. Can you say, like, are there teams, like country teams that are shooting Easton in those Olympics?
Yeah. Usually we've been fortunate. We came out with the X10 in 1996.
Mm-hmm. So, and you're shooting, right?
Mm-hmm. The Parallel Pro, yeah.
I think ever since that product, every medal's been won using an X10.
Since then?
Since that time.
Holy cow.
Every single medal. So that speaks to that just how awesome that product is. That's why I think, we rolled out last fall, we rolled out that X10 Parallel Pro, and it works on the hunting side. And, a lot of guys have picked it up because it's got X10 quality built in. But we're expecting, if not all the archers, virtually all of them, to be using the X10 again at this games. So I'm just looking at kind of who's qualified and that kind of thing.
Yep.
I think if we're not 100% of the field, we're going to be real close. And that's I'm proud of that, but it's also humbling, that they're going to put their Olympic dream on the line with our product. It's pretty cool.
So that X10 that they're using, saying that it goes back to when it was, is it like the same X10? Like if it's not broke, don't fix it type of thing? I know you said about the Parallel Pro being out.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
What we do is we just, you're looking at it, you're always trying to maintain quality and make sure that the manufacturing processes are good and improving all the time. but it's not to say there won't be another X10 at
Sure.
some point. But we really found we had it's just like one of those things. Like if you look at a centerfire cartridge, right?
Yep.
They're still using them today. The basic concept
Mm-hmm.
of a centerfire cartridge, yes, they're a little different, but the basic concept is
Still the same.
150 years old almost.
Yep.
And it's still kind of the same. You can still go buy a 30-06, which came out in 1906.
Yep.
And so I think that's kind of what happened with the X10 is it has the right weight, the right diameter, and it's just the geometry of that arrow it just works really well. And what doesn't mean to say that I won't change and we won't find some improvements, but I think they just found a sweet spot there, and it's working.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you talk about a home run arrow, like for it to have the longevity and of that and the success of it, like.
Yeah. Let me build on that too. One of the things that I like to think, because we're making arrows for that level of archery, the top level of archery,
Mm-hmm.
we take what we learn from those, working to make those arrows good enough for that level of archery. We take what we learn there, and sometimes we come back and say, well, what can we do on the hunting side using what we learned on the target side, making arrows for the top levels, the upper echelons of archery, and make our hunting products better.
Mm-hmm.
So we can take, because it's the same engineering team, it's the same innovation, and that's how we ended up with things like the 4mm arrows or the 5mm arrows, micro diameter. It's because we were developing those products for Olympic outdoor style archery, and then we backed it up and said, hey, some of these attributes will work really well for the hunter. Let's go apply what we learned over there and make those products for the hunting community.
Well, there's a core competency in both, activities, which is accuracy. So in both cases, it's like that's the one thing that matters the most. And then you can just check the other variables. Like in hunting, you'd say, well, durability is also in customization with components and stuff like that. But it's baseline, the same thing.
Archery is such that too. I've noticed this as a hunter, where when you're confident in your shot, in your equipment, you get in the field, you make a better shot.
For sure.
And so that's why some guys will say, oh, should I shoot this? Should I shoot that? And I said, well, the number one thing is that you're confident in what you're shooting, because it'll all work and it'll work really well. We make all kinds of arrows, and sometimes you're like, it's almost overwhelming. Which one should I shoot? But really what to make the best shot you can, you need to be confident in your shot. And that's really what's driving this. Like you mentioned, accuracy. It doesn't matter, that you got in range. If you can't execute the shot in the right place, it's not going to matter. So it's vitally important, but it's also what's going on up here. Archery is a big mental game. And I've noticed it in my hunting. If I haven't practiced right, or I'm not 100% sure, my setup, I don't make as good of a shot. But when I know I'm dialed in, and then I get that opportunity, I can just drill it. And drill it.
Confidence.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big part of it, I think, is getting through that head game of yourself, like making sure that you're ready to go and you're confident, so that when you have that opportunity, you can execute the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's one of the coolest parts about archery and bow hunting in general. And again, not picking on it, but like if you I could take my 8-year-old and I can give him a rifle or a crossbow with a scope and say, shoot that target at 30 yards, and he can do it, right? Like here it is. He's never done it before. He could do it. I give him a vertical bow and say, hey, shoot that target at 30 yards. I mean, first of all, he has to get it back, but even if he gets it back, odds are he's not hitting that, the first time he shoots a bow. It's a whole, there's a deep appreciation, I think, for people that shoot archery. And for a lot of us, like even now, here it is July, and it's like, if I go outside and shoot 30 arrows or something, when I'm done, I feel way better just in life. Like it's something that you can go out and kind of clear your head and get into a zone and do something that, even at a target, you find success, right, on a bad day, and you're like, man, I feel better about that.
Well, that's why, is because it's forcing you to remove, like, it requires 100% of your focus. It's like, and throughout the entire day, it's like you're just overrun with phone notifications and, distractions, things that are going on. And so, like, archery is one of the few things that requires, like I said, 100% of your focus. And so whether you intended to or not, you put all of those distractions aside and you focus on putting that arrow where you intended for it to go. So yeah, you feel better at the end of it.
It's the best way to look at it.
It's therapy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it's still, to me, it just comes back to that confidence too. Like, I go out and I shoot and I was like, okay, everything's dialed in. My sight's where I need it to be.
Yep.
And then you can focus on, okay, now I got to get close enough for a shot, and all the rest of it that goes into it.
The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Lone Wolf Custom Gear.
Man, Jared, we are tree stand fanatics, and I think the one thing that we have learned over all these years is to kill big bucks, we got to be mobile. We've been hunting out of Lone Wolves for many years, the original Lone Wolf, and then obviously with the custom gear stuff, we were using the 0.5 and the 0.75. Yeah. And the one thing that we talked about is, like, what if there were no cables? Here we are.
I really just don't know how you can beat it, frankly. But, a lot of that came, too, from a relationship that we've built with the DeQuistos. We've had both Cody and Andre on the podcast a few times. The passion for hunting, the outlook on the sport and stuff, I think is eye to eye with how we look at it. Everything that has gone into building this brand and to building these tree stands is something that we want to be a part of.
This is the 40th anniversary of these guys creating tree stands that have been critical to how we hunt whitetail deer today. If you look over the past, you'll see Andre's designs being implemented across so many stands over the years. Such a cool thing, but really has changed the way that we all hunt whitetail deer from above now.
Right now, you can use code HUNTER, HUNTR, to get 7% off anything on the entire website. Be the Lone Wolf.
So Gary, switch gears a little bit here. So obviously Easton's a big company, and maybe even, educate Jared and I here on kind of the structure there. Sever is part of that. How is Hoyt also tied into that? What's that kind of look like from a company standpoint?
We talked a little bit about the founder. The Easton family, Doug Easton started the company in 1922. Jim Easton, who just passed away in December, he kind of took over the helm back in the 70s. And then now Greg Easton is running. So we're still family owned after 100 years. Third generation, Greg Easton, is in charge. And so they, and a lot of people know Easton for baseball and hockey and team sports. That division of the company was sold 2006, I believe.
Okay.
And so, but the family kept the archery divisions, which include Hoyt. And so back, I think about 1980, they acquired Hoyt, over 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still family owned. And we operate fairly independently, very independently, really. Hoyt's just down the street from us, though. And we, I talk to those guys, but, any bow will shoot Easton. And so, we want to make sure that, everybody has a chance to shoot Easton. And so they do their thing, we do our thing. But we play nice too. And we, compare notes and work with them. If we have a way we can cross promote and cross pollinate, we certainly do that. And I go to lunch with those guys sometimes. And but we, you think of two divisions of a company that operate completely independently, and that's kind of how we are. So, but still owned by the Easton family.
So then, when did Sever come into the fold?
Let's see. We started experimenting with prototypes in late 2016.
Okay.
And we built. We got the intellectual property from Randy Elmer.
Oh yeah.
Just a bow hunting legend. And then we started. Our engineering team went to work on with his design and seeing what they could do to improve it. And we spent a year doing that, and then testing it, refining it, and brought it out to the market in June of 2018. So we're 6 years in, right?
Wow.
So Sever is a little different. It's Easton is we're driven by pro shops and the expertise needed for tuning and cutting and everything else that needs to happen in archery. Sever is just a very, very high-end broadhead made of titanium, and the one of the reasons that it is consumer direct only is that it's quite expensive to make them.
High cost of components.
And so we need to to be able to get those to market. The distribution, it fits better because of that.
Right.
There's not a lot of tuning that needs to happen with a broadhead or fitment or anything like that. So it kind of lends itself to that. But we kind of, Sever's got its own folks that, kind of focus on it. But we share a lot of it as well. Like our marketing team does a lot there. But it is distributed. The distribution is quite different. So, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun for us to connect with the consumers directly. We're seeing it grow and grow, and we got an exciting new product out this year. So our marketing team's been busy, as you guys mentioned, getting the new. It's kind of the first new concept we've had in those 6 years with the new 4-blade hybrid. So that's been just a blast for us to be able to do that, and it's really fun as marketing. When we market Easton, we promote, we advertise, we do different things, and then you kind of just have to wonder if it's working.
Right.
With Sever, you can run promotions and you immediately, the phones ring, the internet goes crazy. So it's really cool that you have that instant feedback.
Are you guys making that Sever there?
No, we outsource a lot of it.
Okay.
We do, but we ship out of here, right across the street, out of this facility, and so in a lot of ways, it is very different than Easton, including the way it's manufactured in that regard. But we have we ship out of here every day, and it's just our customer services are pretty much everybody. So it's been really fun to grow that brand, develop that brand, and to have. I'll be in a meeting and I start talking about, because my experience with it has been, I always, going way back to when I started with Easton, I was always frustrated with trying to get going back to the confidence thing, trying to get the broadheads to group. And,
Yep.
And so when the first mechanicals came out, they flew great, but getting the blades to deploy and different things was challenging. And then the rear deploys came out with the Rage and some of these others, and kill zones I used, and it was great to see that accuracy come into play.
Yep.
That was a big deal for me. And then when the rear deploys started to come out, that was like a huge game changer, because that you no longer had that problem of getting the blades to open properly, that kind of thing. So there's so many good mechanicals out there now, but I just felt like, I think if you had to pick one aspect of Sever, the hallmark of that brand or product is accuracy.
Yeah.
And that, you think about Randy Elmer, that's him, right?
Yeah, that's his style.
He's killed, I don't know. I was talking to him, and he lost count of how many mule deer he's killed that score over 200 inches. I'm just like, I don't know if I've ever seen it.
That's a good problem to have.
Right. And so we did a poster with him, and he's like, I think we had 36 bucks on that poster that were over 200 inches. And he's like, well, I've got some more. We're like, we've already filled up the poster, Randy. I mean, it's just like, so he's
share the wealth, dude.
Yeah, and as a tournament shooter, he was awesome too, and is. And so, accuracy and that was kind of me too. Is like, I just want something that's accurate.
Yeah.
You know? And so when he developed that, accuracy was a big deal, and that's still the kind of the hallmark of the Summer brand.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Gary, because it certainly is accurate, but it's not what I was expecting you to say, because I think that a lot of the mechanical broadheads have achieved accuracy. Like it's almost, that's why a lot of people choose to shoot them, even the old Rages. They're like, well, it's just a smaller profile.
Yeah.
So across the board, people expect a mechanical broadhead to be pretty accurate or similar flying to their field broad. What I thought you were going to say was durability. So because from a consumer standpoint, that's why we shoot it. You know, the accuracy I would expect to get from a lot of broadheads, like I said. We have talked a lot, and it's funny how even after whatever a decade, this mechanical versus fixed blade, debate
here
has been going on. It's still very much like a lot of people really want to chime in on that. We are adamantly mechanical broadhead guy. We shoot mechanical broadheads. Not that I would advocate that everybody do that. We've covered that recently.
Yeah,
like
depending on arrow setup and bow setup and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So we're both shooting. Jeremy's shooting 70 pounds. I'm shooting 80. And we build our arrows, which we kind of mentioned earlier, but Jeremy's shooting the Easton Access and I'm shooting the X10 Parallel Pros.
Mm-hmm.
And so
we build those for penetration.
We're building those for maximum penetration. They're weighted forward. They're heavy setups. And so when it comes to the broadhead, we're looking for maximum hemorrhage.
Yep, trauma.
Forgiveness that comes along with that. But the main consideration in switching from a fixed blade to a mechanical is we don't want to compromise durability. And inevitably, you're going to in some capacity, because you can't compete with a solid piece of steel. You just can't. But in our opinion, this one has held up the best to testing, not just that we've done, that everybody's done kind of across the market. I've never had an issue with. I've shot these things straight through shoulder blades. With the arrow setup and the bow setup that I'm shooting, I'm not straying away from shoulder bone. In fact, I'm holding right on it half the time, and this broadhead just holds up straight through it. And the fact that you guys have added these bleeder blades to it this year, I think just adds to that. If by chance you were to break off a portion on one of these blades or something, to still have those bleeder blades just adds to the durability element of it.
I think we shot the 2.0s last year.
Yep.
And again, kind of like you, Gary, I think I went through kill zones. I shot Rage,
shot Rages for a long time.
Long time.
We've shot a lot of them. I shot the Schwackers.
Yep.
We've shot I tried is it the Grim Reapers?
Yep, Grim Reapers.
Because a lot of guys, like, you read the forums and stuff, that was a big one.
Rage was the one that, like, it seemed the most, but the problem with Rage, and thus why the arrow setups is like I almost never ever got a pass through with a Rage. It didn't happen. It made a huge entry hole, right? Which is, but it never happened. And on
also,
that side.
they didn't have the locking mechanism. So sever, if a lot of people know anything about it, it locks out. I had some instances with the Rages where they would close back up. So I would have a better, bigger entry hole than I would an exit, which I didn't like.
Yes, correct. And so, like, with this one, the majority of the year that we shot last year, pass through. The only one I didn't was that buck I shot in Illinois, but it was at an angle, and I put it in the last rib, and it basically came out his chest. So it had 3+ feet of penetration. So those were the things that as we started to look at it and really study it before we even shot it, we're like, okay, what are the boxes it checked? I agree. I think the lockout mechanism to be able to pivot was a huge one that we had not seen. And really on your side, shooting 80 pounds, you're shooting a faster bow than I am from being able to push those blades back in, which obviously you can't on this one.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and to speak to the durability, I mean, that I say accuracy, but the way the blades are contained in the ferrule is unique, and it just there's just not a lot of surface that interrupts that arrow flight. But when we came out with this one, my first talk to engineering was, don't compromise the accuracy.
Right.
And our testing has shown that they didn't do that. It's still, if you look at it, it's pretty much, those blades are pretty much in line with the deployment arms.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not really a lot of, and the arrow's spinning as it flies down range. So there's not a lot of extra turbulence there to throw it off of. So we haven't seen an accuracy degradation of degradation at all with that one there. But you know, titanium, awesome material. That's where you're getting that durability. Again, you know, you look at what goes into that broadhead, the locking, pivoting blades that you're talking about. The blades have to be precision made as well for that locking mechanism to work properly. It's got those little tabs that lock it, and they have to be bent at an extremely precise angle in order for that locking tab to work. So that's what I'm saying when we talked initially about the, you know, what goes into a Sevr and just, you know, why they just cost more to make because they're a better broadhead. When you look at all these things, the titanium, you know, the way they lock and they pivot, and then it's got, you know, but yeah, the durability is definitely there, and the tests that you've seen online and with, you know, a lot of the testing that you've done bears it out. And you know, and I sometimes they scold me in meetings because I get off on how much I'll go off on a tangent about how great these Sevrs are, and they're like, you know we're all here shooting Sevr, right?
You don't have
We
to
get it,
sell us
Gary.
on it.
They're great. We get it.
They've never, yeah, they're always like, man, he really believes in this product, and they do. You know,
Yeah.
I guess it's because I went through so many broadheads. I had good broadheads, but when they came out with this one, I was just like, this has to be good, or I'm not going to shoot it.
Yep.
So that back in 2017 when we were trying them out, and after a couple animals, I was like, okay, all right, this works.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see. I mean, the discussions are still happening. I mean, like I said, it's alive and well. There's a lot of guys that are still, you know, very adamantly leaning towards like the fixed blade broadhead, but especially your single bevels, like the things that are, you know, all the technology is geared towards maximum penetration, which obviously is a good thing. Like nobody's going to say, well, you don't want that much penetration.
We want to pass through.
You do. You want to pass through every single time. And so kind of the way Jeremy and I look at that is like, well, okay, yeah, you know, in my case, I'm shooting 80 pounds and a 500 grain arrow at 300 feet per second. It's passing through like every single time. You know, maybe there's an outlier where that doesn't happen. But so if I can achieve that level of penetration, wouldn't I also want to put as big a hole in the thing as possible? And the answer is yes, even from the fixed blade guys. So that's where we say, well, hey, it's not for everybody. If you're shooting like 60 or 65 pounds and you're shooting a lighter arrow set that isn't weighted forward with components, okay, you know, maybe you should be shooting a fixed blade, but.
Well, and I mean, like for me, a lot of it originally was that, you know, I'm not self-conscious enough to say that, like, I make mistakes. I make poor shots. They happen, right? And so, you know, when you have a fixed blade that's doing like whatever, you know, an inch cut or inch and a quarter cut, you know, the blood trail on you know, a back shot isn't great. This gives you that forgiveness essentially. Like it's not a foolproof thing, right? And I'm not advocating for poor shots, but in the events they happen, you know, a mechanical gives you forgiveness in a lot of those shots, and it's the difference sometimes, not necessarily of does it kill it more than a fix does, but the ability to find it because of large holes and potentially finding blood and stuff that you may not see on a smaller entry and exit hole on a fixed blade.
I will say this. I'll give the fixed blade guys a win because, you know, there's a scenario for everything. One situation where a fixed blade broadhead will prevail, I think, especially even in our situations, is in shooting through brush. There is a component there, which from a tree stand almost never happens. But I mean, if guys are hunting off the ground or in certain types of Western hunts and stuff, if you plan to be shooting through brush, I mean, yeah, that's definitely a consideration.
That's a risky business to begin with. But
it's risky, yeah, but I'll give them that one.
Yeah. You know, the other big thing I thought with this, Gary, and I'm not that it would have been a deal breaker, but it sure as heck made it easier, is 125 grains. You can't find many expandables in 125 grains, which, as Jared was saying, with us trying to focus on that front loading and FOC, you know, instead of stacking more outserts and stuff, to have that extra 25 grains in this thing was like, there it is. That's a huge win.
Yeah, I look at that, and it's kind of, sometimes we chuckle around here because everybody's clamoring for heavier inserts, and we're kind of like, why don't you just make use a heavier point.
Yeah.
And so the industry decided, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, that the 100 grain point, I guess it was back. Maybe
That was the standard, right?
Maximum speed or something. But they decided that 100 grain was the magic number. But I laugh when I see everybody trying to how can I raise my FOC? And I'm like, well, you could definitely shoot 125 grain.
Yeah.
You think about it, the ferrule's beefier and you get more FOC, and so you're exactly right. And I would like to see the market gravitate more toward the 125s.
I can't believe it's not.
I'm sure it is. You guys are
starting
to see the sales, right? Is it trending in that direction?
We do see a significant percentage of our sales. I would say it's if it's growing, it's growing. It's not growing hugely fast, but I think it is.
It is growing. Yeah. I think it's kind of this is where bow hunting gets weird. Like if you start as a kid, as a 12, 13-year-old kid, like you do start to understand components and stuff as you start to understand FOC and things like that more. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, they've been rooted in that 100 grain, mindset. Like, I mean, that's just what it was for as long as I knew. Like the thought of 125 grain didn't really even come up. But then understanding like, okay, I want a certain amount of weight up front. I've got the brass hit insert system in my Easton Axis, which is awesome. So I've already got good weight up front. Now instead of putting a collar or something, I can just put that 125 in.
You got to realize though, I think even that consideration, maybe 5 or 10% of bow hunters have that thought.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask Gary. Like, obviously Easton being a very pro shop oriented type brand, like I would assume, a lot of those pro shops are having discussions with their hunters, right? Or are the hunters just telling them what they want?
No, the other way around.
Yeah, and I think mostly it is the hunters and the dealers. They're not going to try to talk somebody out of. They might give them good advice, but the other thing about it is you're trying to get more FOC. Moving that weight even farther out is going to increase all other things held equal for grain, moving it farther outboard is going to enhance the FOC even more. All other things held equal, so if you're looking to up FOC, the quickest way to do it is to go to a heavier point. And you guys are set up for penetration, so you like more weight up front and all that, and that's the ticket. That's the number one thing I would do if I were trying to set up the way you guys are talking about. I'd go to a heavier point. That's the first thing I do. Field points are all available, and you can, we have our Sever line. You can get that. I've used our 150, the Robusto head.
Oh wow!
I've had great success with that one. It just that extra weight up front, and it's a really easy thing to do. You don't even need to go get new arrows. Just go get some field broadheads and you're ready to go.
Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, it's like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. I mean, the guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential on how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in a name. It's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange or all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTER10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, Layer in the Rye.
Layer in the Rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com. I know that since kind of up in mind to that, I've noticed at least from the past shooting a lighter arrow with a 100 grain head, just a smoothness of flight, quietness of the flight, like all these things that, again, thinking more weight, it's like, well, I'm losing speed, I'm offsetting, and I haven't shot the new RX-8 yet through the chrono, but last year with the RX-7 and the setup, I was shooting 285, 286, I think. So, my guess is I'll probably be similar, maybe a little bit higher than that this year. But that, you start talking about from a whitetail standpoint, and, that setup is just, I mean, it's as good as I've ever been in my career.
Here, you'll be impressed by, and I told you, we just had Bomar on before this. So he got, he's one of 3 guys that has the 90-pound, it was the Alpha X. And he's got a 31.5-inch draw. And he's got his arrow built out to, it's 600, in the low 600s. And he's shooting 296 feet per second.
Yep.
What is it? What did you say his arrow weight was?
610.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And he's putting that through African game, water buffalo.
And I noticed
stuff.
He's shooting a Victory Vapor. And he is dialed. Like his whole set, he's like, does more testing than anybody I know. And I asked him, I was like, dude, why don't you, if you're concerned about, this level of precision, I was like, why aren't you shooting an Easton arrow? And I don't know if he had really a solid answer for it.
I don't think he was clear on the difference between.
He may not have known.
Yeah. I don't think you know.
I don't think most people know. When we were talking to Mick about it originally, I was like, well, what is different? He's like, do you understand? Like, this manufacturing process for these Easton shafts is completely different from. It's the only arrow on the market that does not have a spine, like a stiffer side or a softer side, because everybody's aware of like, well, spine tuning and this and that. It's like, no, like we don't need to do that.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a certain amount of, Easton's been around 100 years. Okay, there things come out. It's human nature. Like you go, hey, I want to try the new brand.
Yeah, shiny object.
So I wouldn't call it baggage with our brand, but it's in a way it's kind of like, oh, it's like Sever. We put it out there, and it was fun for me. It was fun to market a new brand because all of a sudden there's curiosity in the marketplace around it. I think there's an aspect to that. But like I was just saying earlier today in one of our meetings, I was like, let's keep our heads down. Let's keep driving to make better and better products, and all other things will work its way out. You just make the best product out there. Yes, people are going to go out there and they're going to try other brands or other products, but if we keep doing what we're doing, eventually they'll come back around and say, you know what, that's pretty cool what Easton's doing with spine around shaft and some of those things that do and really make a difference.
Yeah.
By us paying attention to details. So but I think that and we've seen a lot of arrow brands come and go.
Yeah.
So hey, let's just keep doing what we're doing and things will work out.
Yeah. Well, I think and I mean, not everybody's doing it, but I think most of the guys who are serious about their equipment are likely going through some sort of, reputable pro shop, of which obviously you guys as Easton have very good relations with. And we rely on those pro shops to help us with our setups and stuff. And so, naturally there's I think a large impression opportunity there, because that's where the bow's coming from. Therefore, what are my options from an arrow? And it's changed a little bit, because I know a lot of bow shops, you could go buy your stuff, bring it in, and they'll still cut arrows and do whatever. But, for I think most people just trying to follow it, that's kind of where you're really getting your impression around. I'm not afraid to ask, our guy Tim at Ultimate Outdoors, like, hey Tim, like what should I be using here? What do you think?
Yeah, and I with the Easton, we are very, we understand the value of the pro shop. Archery, we want people to have a good experience in archery, especially newbies, and the dealer is so vital to that.
Yes.
Knowledgeable dealers, just helping the customer get into the right arrow, get into the right bow, get that bow tuned properly, and helping them out with their experience is something that I just don't see changing. And that's why, with Easton, we're just, we just value that relationship, and we foster that relationship all the time, every day, because we just realize how vital the dealer is to helping archers have a really, have the best experience that they can have.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just not, it's not like other hunting equipment that's, fairly turnkey. Like maybe you bore sight a gun before you go out and shoot it in or whatever. But, I mean, whether you're your rest is off a little bit, your sight's off a little bit, you know, your fletchings aren't done right, whatever. Like there's so many different things that you could go out and just be like, okay, cool, I'm going to sight this thing in and do it myself. And like
literally from the get-go, your draw length and your draw
Yeah.
draw. I mean, the whole thing is highly customized.
Anchor points, everything. Like all of that stuff could lead to a real miserable experience if you don't have somebody doing and helping you with it.
You think about that, you know, getting the peep sight in the right place, tying it in, you know, I mean, that's just, they do such a huge service for that.
Yep.
I just think that they're going to be vital as long as we have archery.
Yeah, I would agree. And it is, you know, I know people buy stuff at big box and, you know, there's some companies that are selling online and stuff, and I get it, you know, but I think the opportunity to have somebody work with you to help you set that up so that when you get home, you know, you're pretty much all the way there to getting this thing tuned into where you want to be. It's just such a valuable service. And I do think that some of, especially the younger guys, just because our nature was, you know, buying through e-commerce and stuff, the more that they try to kind of do it themselves, and sure, there's YouTube videos and stuff, man, I can't imagine that it doesn't lead to a bunch of frustration of just something's just not set up right and you can't ever tune the bow. I've heard it from a lot of people. They're like, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I just can't get this bow tuned. I'm like, why don't you go to your pro shop and like let them work on it and like work with you on it. Like you just keep trying to do it yourself and you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah. And they're, you know, those guys are so knowledgeable, and there's so many good dealers out there. Everybody has one, I'm sure, in their, you know, in their neighborhood. So that's what they're there for. Absolutely.
So Gary, you got any big hunts planned for this year?
We got a couple antelope coming up here. We're doing one in Colorado and then one in Utah on the hills of that. And then I'm taking I did this last year. I took a group here from Easton. I was talking about how folks are here at Easton, you know, we're bow hunters, and I had the chance to take some folks, some of our employees, fellow workers, on some of their first bow hunts. We went and did a hog hunt last year. I'm taking a new group this year, so 4 or 5 folks. Have some of them have hunted. None of them have ever hunted east of the Rockies, and so it'll be a new experience for all of them. And I get such a kick out of that. So we're going to do that in about 3-4 weeks, and go sweat it out down there in Florida. And then I've got that Ohio
coming back to Ohio this year.
Yeah, gonna come back. I got unfinished business there.
Yeah.
So maybe elk along the way. I got a few invites there. We have elk out here. So, you know, seems like we always find something to hunt, but it's also a busy time of year for us because we do our rollout for our new product line in October. So we're getting ready for that right now, getting things finalized with new intros on the arrow side, components, anything else that we're going to introduce. We have some exciting stuff for you guys, for the market to look at. Just really have that in the final stages right now of testing and getting that through manufacturing and so forth. So that's all in the works.
Awesome. Very cool.
Exciting, man.
What do you think?
I'm stoked to put that thing through a deer. You know, just because, again, success with the 2.0 last year, you know, and just kind of doing it. I can't remember who did that that broadhead test I sent you the other day. You know, that he does all of them.
I can't remember either.
Right, but that, you know, I don't know if you saw it, Gary, but I mean that hybrid tested the best out of any broadhead he's ever tested before.
Yeah, it was probably John Lusk.
It was Lusk. Yep.
Sent to him, and he called me back, and he was all excited because he said this one tested so well. And, and it didn't surprise me because we've done our own, but yeah, I know he's outside of Easton, so
yeah, he's critical about stuff.
Yeah, to have him to get his results back, we know, you know, we weren't biased because he's doing it, and we were like, this confirms what we thought, and so we're just so excited. You know, so right out of the gate, it's only been on the market. We're up to maybe 3 weeks now, and right out of the gate, there's, you know, we're just seeing so much interest in it. So we're excited to see how that one go.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome built product. I do think and I'm sure a lot of people listen to this just because of the style that we hunt are probably looking at it and saying, man, 125 grain, like really solid mechanical, like that's a high interest peaking opportunity because so many don't have that availability of things to be able to beef up to. So yeah, man, I think it's awesome. I'm really excited to be able to put that thing to use this year here in, a few more than a few more weeks.
I know it's coming up fast. Coming right up.
It's coming up fast. I guess the last thing I was going to cover, kind of flipping back onto the East and stuff, Gary, is, we talk about some of the systems. Like I know I'm shooting the hit system, the brass insert system on that. It definitely, obviously, being on the Axis 5mm, like you've got different systems for the different arrows and stuff. But, that to me, it's kind of why Sever, I think, just made sense around the Easton size. It's like when you go from, literally knock the tip at this point, just continuing to cover that whole thing and probably going back to even what we talked about with the pro staff side, it's like, if we're going to do this thing, let's set these guys up right from literally knock to tip so that, they don't have to worry about, what should I do for an insert system here or something. You've got those availabilities for it right out of the gate.
Yeah. And that's what we focus on because, it's, you could get distracted with, going after other types of products. And I just say, hey, it feels right to me to focus on one thing and do it the best. And, you've seen it with our components, like we rolled out the match grade lineup this year, the X10 Parallel Pro, which obviously about because you're shooting it. And I'm a 5mm guy too. I really love those. And, the hit system, or if you want to use if you want to use a half out, we have that available. A lot of guys are liking that. They like the extra protection up front. And we're working on, we may have something here in the next few weeks, seeing if we can make that work with a 5mm. So, watch, actually, maybe by the time we air this, we may have even more news on that. So, that's the making the components, the arrows, points, all work in concert is exactly what we're doing. And we've got, I think at this point, somebody wants to set it up a certain way, we've got options for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to do brass on an Axis, we got you covered. You want to do, if you want a protection collar up front, we got that covered. We got half outs covered. You want an AC product, X10 Parallel Pro, we've got that covered. But all the components, that's the testing, and we're finalizing right now is our next year product line, is making sure everything works together, making sure we've covered all the bases, all the component systems. And we have a team here dedicated to making sure that, no stone goes unturned. We've covered it all so that when we bring it out to the market, it's ready to go.
I think honestly, as a brand, right, I think that gives you guys, frankly, a lot of protection, right? The moment guys start mixing and matching things and maybe not doing things that should jive with the product, could affect performance in a not so good way. So by offering all of those options to say, hey, listen, we've already tested this. We know if this is what you want, this is what you need. It just controls the setting a little bit more to make sure you've got that accuracy and consistency.
Yeah, we have a quality assurance department right here in this building. And you think about that, and the guy that's over it all, he's a bow hunter. Yep. So if something goes haywire, he understands the problem because he's part of the sport, and being able to react to that. And so we're constantly looking at that, making sure that our quality is up to snuff, and that's what happens right here in this building. So we're able to react quickly and make sure that everything's working together. We test, we inspect, and we do all that right here. So it really makes it buttoned up tight, like you're saying.
It's awesome, man. Well, I know Jared and I appreciate the partnership. It's exciting for us to have this discussion because, we don't take a ton of partners, and when we do get into them, even before the Easton and Sever relationship, like, we asked the questions and did the vetting just to make sure, like, hey, we want to make sure these are products that we would be using anyways, right? And of course, like, just this discussion, I think, helps summarize that for a lot of people of the kind of behind the why for it. And then obviously for us, it's always been, how this industry is. It's sometimes like just seems like, any kind of innovation is pulling teeth. And so knowing, Easton and Sever's background of kind of just continuing to try to push that bar of innovation and make things better, I think is super important to us, because that's just something that we strive for in everyday life, of just trying to make things better.
I would, and to have you say that really, that means a lot to me, because, to have your endorsement and your trust, because this is what you guys do, right? It's important to you. And so to have your trust, that means a lot. But I would say, back to you guys, pay you guys a compliment too, that is, there's a lot of guys that, want to work with Easton, and as much as I want to, I can't work with everybody. I just don't have the budget. I don't have the time to, work with everybody closely enough. And so, you guys, I do such a good job, and are, I'm happy to be working with you guys. There's so many other folks out there that are circling all the time. And so I have to kind of really scrutinize who I work with. And you guys are definitely doing things that are next level. And we're really happy with the partnership.
That means a lot to us, because we're pretty humble guys. And we're just kind of doing what we love to do and are passionate about. And it means a lot to us, Gary.
Well, cool. It's a small industry, and it's fun to get to know everybody. And it's, there's a lot of good people in archery, and I can't imagine a better industry to be part of.
Oh, I know, man. I will say this, maybe leave it on this, and we brainstorm this somehow. I really would love to figure out how, and I'm not saying that it's dead, but like how we can continue to bring back something like the ATA. You've been around it since the beginning. I've been at ATA show for, 13, 14 years, something like that. And it's still there, right? But we've seen kind of how this is going. And man, that was the thing that every year after Christmas, I couldn't wait to get to ATA to just be around everybody. It was like literally the rejuvenation you needed after the holidays to like get the year started on a rocket, basically.
Yeah. And I love that show. I guess because I have a different perspective. I'm in marketing, and I love it because everybody's in the room.
Yeah,
I can see you guys face to face, and the other people in the industry that I talk to, throughout the year. But to be able to, spend a little time and sit down and kind of reset with everybody, it's a blast. So, we'll be there again, and we're excited to see everybody again.
Where are we at this year? Do we see?
I don't know.
Indianapolis.
We're back in Indy. There you go.
Cool.
Easy drive.
Soon we'll be there.
We'll be there.
As always.
Yeah.
We always wonder, is it going to be the last year?
But like, should we go? Yep. What else are we going to do? We need to be there. So
I'll be there. If nothing else, you got one.
Yeah, we'll come hang out with Gary.
Perfect.
Well, cool, man. Well, listen, Gary, we appreciate you coming on, and I think one thing from this that we'll talk offline is we'd love to come out and see things and take a tour. I mean, that would be kind of a magical thing to be able to see everything start to come together from that. So we definitely need to get that one on the books.
Yeah, we'd love to have you out here. So the door's open whenever you're ready.
The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Quest Hunt Co.
Man, it seems like as technology and social media and stuff just gets incorporated into our daily lives in the deer season more and more, it's like we're always looking for ways to just dial it back, spend more quality time with deer hunters, and really make deer hunting and deer camps great again.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all been part of that annual buck pull, whether it's at your camp or the local fire department, and we're trying to bring that feeling back with Quest Hunt Co. to be able to compete against other people in your state, but also be part of a national competition.
You can sign up in as many states as you want to enter deer that at the end are going to get scored, and you have an opportunity to win some big prizes. And there's an in-person banquet in February that Jeremy and I are going to be at where those prizes are going to get held out. I think we're going to do some sort of whatever, live podcast or speaking, we'll figure that out. But just looking forward to spending time with people who sign up for the tournament.
Yeah, so you can go to Quest Hunt Co. and sign up. Use the code Hunter15 at checkout. They'll save you a little bit of money, and then hopefully we'll be able to see you in Missouri in February of 25 at the annual convention.
To make this season a quest. Very cool.
Cool. It is... So for anyone, Lusk was the guy who reviewed it. So if you go on YouTube, or Nick, maybe we'll drop a link in there.
Yeah.
We'll give Lusk a little props. But he did a really awesome review on that, so that people aren't like, oh, they're sponsored by it, that's why they're talking. No, it's a badass broadhead.
Just straight up standardized testing.
Yeah, it scored unbelievable. I mean, I think the cool thing is the things that are nice to hear from a company like that are, obviously their model is distribution and pro shops. That's who they built. They can't do it because they have too much money in that product cost-wise. Like the margins aren't there to make it work for anybody. And so that right there should make anyone buying that feel pretty good about the fact that, like, if whatever you're paying for that, I don't know if that retail price is out yet or not, there isn't a ton of margin in that product, which means it's high quality components. So those are the things that I tend to look at, because it used to be,
well, that's why we're shooting them. I mean, when
it was like $45 for a 3-pack of Rages or whatever.
That's what we used to say. We're like, well, that's just basically a better built Rage. So that's why we switched.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we were all over it for a long time, and it was just like, I don't know. And then I think again, there was a lot of other. The big one was like, oh, we got 125s. Like immediately, that's like, that was the one thing that was kind of holding me back from a Rage side, is like, man, 100. Like, if you had a 125 that was a beefier ferrule and stuff, all of those things are going to make a big difference. There it is. Now, addition of the bleeder blades, your penetration on this,
locking in, pulling away from the herd there.
You're digging this thing out of the ground on every shot. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And yeah, the Easton thing I think is funny, because we've had conversations with Mick and other guys around Easton, and it's like, and Gary did do justice, but not enough in that, like, this is the gorilla in the aerospace.
By far.
There ain't nobody close, right? If you think that they are, they're not. Nobody's close to this thing.
In terms of arrows sold.
In terms of numbers
sheer
of arrows
size,
sold.
Yeah.
Yep, sheer size. And as being that, sometimes they just are, they keep doing their thing. They keep producing. I mean, you hear the arrow they're using in the Olympics is older than Jared, basically.
Yeah.
And they haven't changed it, and they win everything every time. So
way older than me. Gary's just been working at Easton as long as I've been alive.
So when you get into that mindset, and this is a conversation we had with Gary and these guys, is that, sometimes you kind of let the foot off the gas of who you're reaching, right? So when Gary was talking about these, you talk about the shiny Victories or Black Eagles or whoever has come out in the past and really attacked the market, and they're like, well, these guys must be owning the market. They're not even close, right? It's just that Easton's selling so many of these things in so many different categories that maybe you don't see the level of attention in a whitetail space per se as you would in these other ones.
It's marketing and it's perception, and Easton is so dominant, I think, over the pro shop space that they've just relied for a long time, and that's where most arrows are sold, frankly. So that's why the perception exists.
Yep. So it was really cool for us because, again, a 102-year-old company, we felt pretty confident in our own right that it's like, well, listen, clearly now understanding these are the best arrows by far. Yeah. We know that now.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that everybody that's a whitetail hunter is shooting Easton.
Knows about it. Yeah,
like, there's no reason for you not to be shooting these arrows once you understand the technology behind them compared to the competitors.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. So yeah, it was cool for us to understand that, and I think Gary said it best. Like, now understanding, like, from our Hoyts to Eastons to Severs, like, when we have that set up and we're in a stand, dude, you feel deadly.
Yeah.
You feel confident. You feel deadly. There's not many questions that are left to be answered besides, can you pull the shot off yourself without a human error?
Yeah. Well, it's all coming out of that Easton family too. I mean, across the board. Granted, some of the companies have been kept separate, and they deal differently in them. It's the same level of
Same
or standard
quality.
of qualities across the board. So I mean that's why we feel that way. Like you said, from the east, from the bow to the shaft to the broadhead, like all the way down it. It's like, dude, it's all coming to the same place. It's all held to the same standard, and we like that a lot.
Yeah. So anyways, we appreciate Gary joining us for episode 193 of Hunter Podcast from Easton and Sever, and hopefully we'll be out there at the factory at some point taking a look, and we'll catch y'all next week.
Later.
Take me